Hello and welcome to Connect at the Capitol. I'm Kenneth Pratt and I'm a lobbyist with the Florida Bankers Association. And this year it's my pleasure to serve as the chair of the Public Policy and Advocacy Committee of the Florida Bar.
Hi, and I'm Rosanna Catalano, an attorney and lobbyist too. I serve as vice chair of the committee.
And this year our committee has launched this new initiative or this new series of interviews so that our Florida Bar attorneys can get CLE by listening through these interviews over live streaming. You can watch replays of today's episode by visiting our committee's YouTube channel. The channel is the Florida Bar GPPAC. If you're watching us live on Facebook, you can also ask questions of today's guests by using the Facebook chat function, and we'll try to fit in a few questions at the audience at the end of the show. But for now, it's my opportunity to introduce today's guest. Our guest today is the Secretary of the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, Simone Marstiller. Prior to being appointed Secretary, Simone Marstiller was of counsel for the Gunster Law Firm in Tallahassee and also in Tampa, where her practice areas included appellate consulting, litigation, government affairs, procurement, ethics, and elections. She joined Gunster in 2017 after retiring from the First District Court of Appeal, where she served as a judge for 6 years. In 2001, Simone served as Assistant General Counsel to Governor Jeb Bush. In that position, she assisted the Governor's General Counsel in overseeing the legal operations of the governor's agencies and advising the governor on a wide variety of legal and policy issues. Simone was selected in 2002 to serve as General Counsel for the Department of Management Services, DMS, the administrative agency for state government. There she managed all legal affairs for the agency, including matters related to the government procurement, outsourcing, state facility management, and collective bargaining. While serving in this capacity, Governor Bush appointed her as interim secretary of the agency. From DMS, Simone returned to the governor's office in 2003 to serve as deputy chief of staff. In 2004, Governor Bush appointed her state chief information officer to head state government's central technology planning and policy organization. And in 2005, she became secretary of the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, the state's largest regulatory agency. In 2007, Attorney General Bill McCollum appointed Simone Associate Deputy Attorney General for the state of Florida. In addition to serving on the executive management team for the Office of the Attorney General, she was the agency's general counsel and was responsible for overseeing 4 agency divisions, including the Civil Rights and Opinions divisions. When appointed to the appellate court in 2010, Simone was serving as executive director for the Florida Elections Commission. Simone was born in Monrovia, Liberia, and grew up in St. Petersburg, Florida. She earned her Bachelor of Business Administration degree in 1988 from Stetson University in DeLand, and her Juris Doctorate cum laude in 1996 from Stetson University College of Law in Gulfport, Florida. Welcome to the show, Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am thrilled to have been asked to come and chat with you and your membership and your viewership. I think this is a really neat thing that you all are doing. I love it. You all are being very innovative and very forward thinking. And I think that this is a great thing for, current Florida Bar members. And certainly the new people coming on board have expectations of this kind of thing. So good for you all for, being ahead of the curve. I love it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that compliment. And, we're just glad to have someone with your breadth of experience. And obviously our audience is going to be able to ask some questions at the end here. And hopefully we'll get an opportunity to ask whatever they want to of you with your breadth of experience in state government. But I want to start really to have you talk a little bit about your role at DJJ and get folks familiar with your role there and what are some of your duties and the outreach of the agency.
Well, let me just say this. I love having the opportunity to talk about DJJ because not enough people, in my opinion, across the state of Florida really have a good sense for what this agency does. So thank you all for that. I was going to say, let me see if I can summarize it, but I will start here. The Department of Juvenile Justice, we neither arrest kids nor prosecute kids, but we do everything else for kids within the realm of juvenile justice. We do prevention, we do detention, we do residential commitment, and we do probation. So detention and residential commitment, those are the two, I think, easier things that people are familiar with. Detention is think of it this way: when a youth is apprehended by law enforcement, prior to being adjudicated, we take them in. We look after them, but it's a short-term stay while they're waiting for adjudication. Most of the kids who come through our system are released on home detention or, electronic monitoring or something like that. Only very few kids who are apprehended by law enforcement have to remain in our detention centers. On the residential commitment side, that comes after adjudication. Once a child is adjudicated delinquent and committed to the Department of Juvenile Justice for rehabilitation. Kids in Florida do not serve set sentences, right? So we take them in. Each child is given an individual plan. Each child is individually assessed for his or her needs. And we take care of all of those needs, not only the criminogenic risk factors that we have to deal with, but many of our kids come into our system with mental health issues, substance abuse issues. Many are developmentally disabled, and we have to deal with those kinds of things, in addition to working to rehabilitate them and integrating their families and guardians into the process. And so, those individual plans can take, depending on the level of commitment, depending on the child, can take anywhere from 3 months to maybe 18 months. Mm-hmm. The age range that we tend to deal with is 10 to 17 primarily. Every once in a while, a younger child will come through, but by and large, 10 to 17. And depending on when the child is adjudicated, he or she may stay with us until, they're 20 or 21. It just depends. So those are the functions I think that most people are familiar with now, and probation to a degree. So probation is, I think everybody's familiar. That can be either the court has put a youth on probation instead of adjudicating them delinquent, or after commitment, as they come out of our commitment programs, there might be a period of post-commitment probation. But I will say this about my juvenile probation officers. One officer is assigned to every youth from the moment he or she walks in the door in detention. And a probation officer follows that child all the way through his or her time in the juvenile justice system until we hand them off back to their families and they have completed all that they have to complete. And I think that's a really neat thing. I think it stresses the importance of the role of our probation officers, that they don't just do probation. They really are involved in every step of the process, helping to determine what is best for every one of the children who comes through our system. So I saved the best for last, and that is prevention. The state of Florida is one of literally a handful of states that handles juvenile justice at the state level from end to end. Most of my counterparts only have to deal with residential commitment, and the other functions are handled at the county level. But we handle basically everything with, I think, a couple of exceptions. But in the prevention side, that's where we get the best bang for our state dollars, because that's where we reach out and we're dealing with children and families who are at risk, and we supply them and get them the programming that they need to keep them out of the juvenile justice system in the first place. And wherever I go, and when I have a chance to talk about DJJ, I always say that prevention dollars are the best dollars the state could ever spend in the name of improving public safety and in the name of juvenile justice. I mean, our prevention programs overall, including civil citation, those programs are somewhere about 94 to 95% effective in keeping kids out of the juvenile justice system at all. The further you move in the process, the more likely it is that a child is going to continue to recidivate. Mm-hmm. So prevention is the key, and that is something that I have to say DJJ has, in the last 8 to 10 years, really, really made a huge push and a successful push in shifting funding from the deep end to the front end. And that has, was that a car?
It was a
I
motorcycle.
don't know. Okay. But doing that has really reduced the number of children who even need now to be in residential commitment on the deep end. It really works. And I'm really proud of the work that this agency has done and continues to do.
Sure.
Well, I know that you have a number of partners and stakeholders that work with DJJ, and many of them deal with the prevention side. So, can you tell us a little bit more about some of these partners and stakeholders you have? I know, for example, you have the Juvenile Justice Circuit Boards, the Florida Network of Youth and Family Services, and of course, the Dolores Barr Weaver Policy Center. Can you tell us more about these partnerships?
Well, we do. You're absolutely right. We have many partnerships across the state and nationally, quite frankly, because there are, so for example, like the Dolores Barr Weaver Center, they do a lot of policy work in this area. And we work with them so that we can implement the best policies that we can. Of course, Dolores Barr Weaver is very concerned with girls in the JJ system. And so they help us develop programs that are targeted for girls in the system and frankly targeted for keeping girls out of the system. But that's just really one example. Our circuit advisory boards, in my mind, they are the framework for how juvenile justice issues and frankly all child welfare issues, in my mind, should be handled at the local level. Because my cabs, as we like to call them, the cabs are made up of all of the stakeholders in a particular circuit. So court system, state attorney, public defender, community-based care providers, law enforcement, they all get together and work through at a community level the issues that they may be having. They come up with very innovative ideas and solutions for dealing with issues in their areas. And that's exactly what communities should be doing. They are an important part of the framework that is the juvenile justice system in the state of Florida. We have, of course, partnerships with many community groups, Boys and Girls Clubs, Big Brothers, Big Sisters on the larger end, but many, many community nonprofits and organizations that are doing some really, really good work inside their communities. And so we have, among other funding mechanisms, we have community partnership grants. And the folks in my prevention area, headed by my Assistant Secretary, Alice Sims, who is on fire for prevention. She's fantastic. She and her team are the ones who are charged with going out into the communities and establishing those partnerships. And they work, right? Because the people in the community, those providers, those programs, they know their community members. They know their families. They're familiar to them. There's a level of comfort there. And they're able to do so much at that local level that we might not be able to do on a larger scale. And I firmly believe that if we're ever going to be successful, and we have been, but if we're going to continue to be successful in juvenile justice, really the grassroots, the community level work, the bringing families and doing what we can do to support them, that level of support has to begin and has to occur at the community level. And that's where our most fruitful partnerships, I think, lie.
Awesome. You got a bunch of lobbyists listening in live. So you have to talk a little bit about legislation. You all had a pretty busy legislative session last year, several bills that affected your agency. And so I want to kind of go through and have you talk a little bit about some of the legislation that affected DJJ last year. I know Senator Brandis had SB 1144, which was, I think, the main agency bill, and then Senator Perry had another piece on juvenile diversion program expunctions. And then there was also a piece that dealt with DJJ contracted direct care staff. Can you talk about some of those legislative efforts from last year?
I'm happy to do so. Let me just start by saying the Florida legislature has been a huge supporter of DJJ and what we're doing in our programs. And I'm so grateful to them for recognizing the work that we're doing and for making sure that we are funded in such a way as to continue to be successful. The few bills that you mentioned just now, we had only one of those was really driven by DJJ. And that was, I think, the first one you mentioned. And that was really very simple and non-controversial. I wanted to establish inside DJJ officially a program area called program accountability. As you all may or may not know, particularly in our residential commitment area, but obviously in the prevention area, our services are delivered by contracted providers, both, non-for-profit entities and for-profit entities. Mm-hmm. Regardless, it's important that I am held accountable, but so are our providers, to make sure that we are spending the taxpayers' money in the best way possible and that we're getting, bang for our buck. Sure. And I believe, and I believe then, and I still do, because I am going to try it again this year, hopefully. I believe it's important that the work that we do internally on accountability, I think it's important that that area gets the visibility that it really does deserve, and that it is placed at a level in this organization that is equal with and on the same level as all of our substantive service areas. I want for my providers to know, and I think they do now, right? After I've been here for 18 months, I want them to know how important accountability is. Mm-hmm. And so that was a bill that we at DJJ pursued. I believe that it was well received at the time, but both of you know what happens in the waning days of the session. Some things maybe fall through the cracks, or whatever. I don't know specifically what happened, but I do know that it was not because there was no support for that in the legislature. There absolutely was.
We've all been there, Secretary.
Yeah. We live to fight another day. Sure. But Senator Perry's bill, I think something similar happened with his as well. That one primarily was intended to provide for the expunction of records for juveniles who complete a diversion program, even if it's a felony diversion program. Right now, Florida statutes allow that kind of expunction if a youth has successfully gone through a misdemeanor diversion program. And Senator Perry's intent, and certainly one that I would, support, and I think again, many people would have supported that, mm-hmm. Was intended to include felony diversion as well. I mean, it's all about giving kids a second chance, as they move forward in their lives. And I think the other one you mentioned was an appropriation for retention bonuses, right? Yeah, for retention bonuses for our residential care staff. Again, those are contracted staff, so that is not something that the agency necessarily advocated for, because you have colleagues out there who do that kind of work for our providers, which is fine. And I believe, unfortunately, that appropriation, in the wake of COVID and having to, find much needed money in light of what we've been going through. I believe that appropriation did not make the cut this year.
Well, we've all, like I said, Secretary, we've all been there, and you got to turn around and get back up again. So
that's all we can do, my friend. That's all we can do. And I mean, we all get it, right? We understand the process. I think that what we all do need to understand going into the session and probably the next, 1 or 2 years is that, our economy has suffered because of COVID, and we all know that. And the dollars are going to be harder to obtain. But we, folks in my area and others, are going to do everything that we can to make sure that we are providing all the services we can, even under tight, fiscal and economic conditions. But we all know that going in.
Yeah, sure.
We live to fight another fight, another day.
It's true.
So I know that DJJ has oversight over medical, mental health, substance abuse, and developmental disability services to all youth adjudicated delinquent and placed under the supervision of your department. With all of that being said, how has this oversight changed or been affected by COVID, since we're talking about COVID-19?
Mm-hmm. Well, luckily, the way our programs work is that each one of the contracted providers who run one or more of our residential commitment programs, they normally either have therapists on staff or, will contract out. It just depends on how they do. By and large, they have therapists and certainly medical personnel, physicians, nurses, all of that on staff. So those individuals were still coming into the programs on a daily basis, just like any other staffer would. In some instances, so if there were some psychiatric therapy or psychotherapy or something like that had to be provided for children, in some instances, telemental health has come into play during the COVID pandemic to make sure that the services are provided, but in a safe way. But by and large, and certainly similarly as to what we have had to do in detention, we have certain people on staff, and it's not just the direct care workers. And if they're on staff, they're coming into the facilities, and they have done so during COVID. There is no way as I told people, we can't turn people away. We can't shut our doors. We had to keep it going. And between my direct staff and my residential providers, under contract and their staff, I'm talking about an army of people that has done amazing, amazing work over the last 6 months in particular, putting their own health at risk. But we've done it. And the children, I understand that even from their perspective, it's been hard not to have as much human interaction and interaction with their families as they normally would. But we've all worked very hard across the system to keep them occupied, to keep them sane, but to absolutely make sure that they got all of the services to which they're entitled and that we are required to give to them. Got
it. And one of the things that you talked about was kind of the challenges, I guess, that you all have had. And just wondering, is your staff back to? Are you all at 50% capacity, or are you all fully back? How are you all administratively handling the COVID side?
Well, administratively, we still have some people who are teleworking. My agency is about 3,000 strong. About half of us work in detention centers, and those individuals, my detention officers and their supervisors, and the center superintendents, they did not have the luxury of teleworking because of the nature of what they do.
Right.
So I would say of the what we would call administrative functions of the agency, probably about 60% of my staff has been fully teleworking for the last 6 months. But many of us, including myself and my executive team, have been here in the office throughout. You know, we're taking our precautions. My mask is just right over there, as are my wipes and my hand sanitizer. But it's been, you know, what's weird is we had to very quickly change the way, even from an administrative perspective, that we do things, right? So there are a lot of people who were not used to teleworking and for whom that hadn't really been a part of their routine, who had to get used to it very quickly. And we also had to make sure that they had the resources to do it. So either it's laptops or getting them VPN access or whatever the case may be. And again, I've got to give my staff kudos. They adjusted quickly. They have been getting the work done. We have made so much use of Microsoft Teams. In fact, before COVID, we had Teams, but for whatever reason, it wasn't rolled out to the whole agency. So COVID came along and forced us to do it. And now I will tell you, I've got members of my team who would now much rather use Microsoft Teams than anything else. I mean, you know, they are going to have to come back at some point and start dealing with each other face to face. I miss it. I really do miss it. But we have done well, and we've remained productive during this time, and I think it has worked well for us.
That's great to hear. Your business is essential to our
it
state.
Is.
So, as you said, you can't really quit.
No, we no is not an option for us. No.
Absolutely.
I can't hear you.
Ro, did you have?
It's all right.
There you go.
Yeah, so I'm amazed to hear how you all were able to pivot so quickly. So, you know, staying on this theme, you know, we're at the beginning of a new school year. It's like no other, thanks to COVID. I don't know if you all saw one of my kids trying to sneak in here while we're recording this, but your agency collaborates with, you know, we talked about different partners, but one of them, you know, you work with the Florida Department of Education and local school board, district school boards to ensure, you know, compliance with your programs and the youth served in the DJJ setting. So tell us more about that and also how COVID has impacted that as well.
Well, education inside of our DJJ facilities, both detention centers and residential commitment programs, as you said, Rosanna, though, you know, education is handled currently by the individual school districts where the program or facility is located. And so you can imagine, as a general proposition, as a child moves through the system, there has to be a lot of cooperation and collaboration and good record keeping and all of that between DJJ and the school district. And then sometimes it's DJJ, the school district in which the child lives, and potentially the district in which, if it's a committed child, the district in which the child is going to be residing for a brief period of time. And the challenge is to make sure that that child's education, his or her experience, isn't interrupted. And as you all can imagine, for children in my system, it's even that much more important, because many kids come into my system one or two grade levels behind. And so we simply can't afford to drop the ball on them. Now, during the COVID situation, I have to say, our school districts have been fantastic. Most of our programs, most of our facilities were already wired for distance learning. So we were able to implement that in many, if not most, of the districts. We did make use of work packets. So somebody from the district would drop the packets off, the kids would do it. our staff had to help encourage them to do the work, somebody would come and pick them up. For a period of time, of course, in our facilities, we, to keep everybody safe, had cut down on the traffic, right, of individuals coming in and out of the buildings. And obviously, we want to make sure that our teachers remain healthy, but we made it work. And so now, as we're transitioning back into the school year, we're working once again with our school districts. Their teachers are starting to come back into our facilities. I want to make sure that they are comfortable that they're coming into safe environments. And so we're continuing all of the protocols that we put in place early on, the health screening, the screening tools, the temperature taking, the sanitizing. All of our kids and staff, my staff, wear masks in the facility during the day, which I think went a long way toward helping us level off, flatten our curve. And you know what? We always make it work, and we are happy to do whatever our school districts need to make the transition back into the school year a safe one and a smooth one. Is it challenging? Yes, but it always is. This just adds another level to it. But it's, I don't know if people really understand how committed and how agile Florida state government has been and can be when it comes to taking care of its citizens. People have no idea what we do to get things done, but we do, and I'm proud both of my team, and I'm proud of the folks on the education side who have been working so closely with us through all of this.
Awesome. Well, one of the things I was excited about to see when we were doing a little research on this interview, I was excited to see that you all have established a groundbreaking partnership with Bethune-Cookman University, one of Florida's HBCUs. I'm a graduate of a HBCU myself, Morehouse College in Atlanta. So glad to see that you're engaging the folks down at Bethune-Cookman. Tell us a little bit more about that partnership and how it's going to affect your workforce and your staff.
We are really, really excited about this. Dr. Randy Nelson came to me early on in my tenure here at DJJ, and we sat down and we met face to face. And he said, we really should do this partnership. This is something good for both Bethune-Cookman and DJJ, but more specifically, we both wanted to figure out a way to develop tomorrow's juvenile justice experts, researchers, and leaders. And this is, a fantastic way to do it. So the way the partnership basically will work is that Bethune-Cookman students who are in the criminal justice, study area, or maybe even psychology or social work, it doesn't really matter, I don't think, they are going to be able to participate in research projects that we have going on. I have an amazing team in research and data. And for those who don't know, state of Florida DJJ is number one in the country in the way of data collection, the research that we do, and making sure that data drives policy and that it's clean, good, usable data. People come to us from, national level and other states as well. So, and all of that happened, before I got here. But I'm going to, toot the horn of the agency anyway.
Absolutely.
But so the students at Bethune-Cookman, then they have the opportunity to do some really good substantive work while they're still students, getting used to, Florida's system, understanding the data, understanding what it means, helping them, to see how decisions are made at a policy level based on the data that we have. And then later, after they have completed their education, we're going to do what we can do to provide employment opportunities to those students inside DJJ. I have an amazing group of people who work here in this agency, but like any other state agency, we need to bring in new people who are as committed as, those who have made a career out of this, who have been here for 20, 30, 40 years.
Wow.
I want to see today's generation of college students come into DJJ and love it like those people love it, and love it like I love it, and actually make a career out of it. Because the longer that they stay here, the more that they learn, the more effective they're going to be. And I can't think of a better way for them to use their education to help not only their communities, but communities around the state, and depending on the nature of the research, around the country. So I'm really excited about it, and I think I'm certain it's going to be a good thing, both for the university and for us.
Sounds like an amazing partnership that you created there. Impressive. So I know, I just wanted to say to the audience, if you do have questions and comments, please go ahead and post them, and we'll go ahead and ask Secretary Marstiller your questions. So for those of us watching the news and programs and today, it feels like juvenile crime is on the rise. It can sometimes feel that way. And for you, that you're seeing the numbers on a daily basis, what are the statistical trends regarding juvenile crime and recidivism? Is it just anecdotal what we're seeing?
It's interesting. You should ask the question. I was looking at something just the other day on, juvenile crime rates or arrest rates nationally. And one of the observations that the article made is that people have a sense that crime is up when that's really not the case. Now, we look at DJJ, we look at arrest rates as opposed to, crime rates. And there's a difference, between the two. So, for example, FDLE's, annual crime report, that is based on reported crimes. And that measures something somewhat different than what we're looking at. So when we look at juvenile arrest rates in Florida, we are at a 44-year low in juvenile arrest rates.
Wow.
And
wow.
Wow. And because of the funding that we have received from the legislature and the programming and that, again, that shift toward focusing on prevention and early intervention, the arrest rate has gone down, 27% in the last 5 years alone. That's incredible. Now that's bang for your buck. That is bang for your buck. Now, I will say, do we hear about juvenile crime? Of course we do. But, you're not going to hear necessarily reported in the news, well, today we might have had 5 kids arrested, but we had 2,000 who were not arrested. You're not going to hear that. But by and large, we are really happy. I am really happy with the work that is being done all across the state, and not just by DJJ. As I said earlier, you've got community groups that are also working together to bring down their juvenile arrest rates. And, you think about as well, you asked about as well, recidivism. Again, in prevention and early intervention, that's where you're going to get the best results. Now, is the rate higher than I would like for it to be for kids coming out of residential commitment? Yes, I will say that. I've said it before, I'll say it again, yes. But we also have to keep in mind that because of the reform work that this agency has done, most of the kids now in residential commitment are really those high-end, more serious offenses. They have been involved in delinquent behavior and activities. more frequently and for longer periods, right? So you expect that it's going to be a bit more challenging to bring their recidivism rates down. A couple of thoughts about that. Number one, national research has shown that children do outgrow their tendency to delinquent behavior. So somewhere around 17, 18, 19, they start to outgrow that. So that's number one. Number two, though, and one of the things that I really would like to see done, we need to really look at the rehabilitative programming that we have that's directly related to criminogenic behavior and those factors. We do a pretty good job now, but because we insist on using evidence-based programs and data in all of our programming, what we have is kind of a mix right now. We're using programming for which there is evidence of success, but with kids who are earlier in the process, right? So earlier intervention, we have that data. We don't have the data yet and the evidence yet for the programming that really needs to be done inside the residential commitment programs. That's what I'm trying to get us to. And I want for Florida to be able to take the lead on that and to serve as, you know, the model, if you will, for the rest of the country. You know, none of this is as you can imagine, it's not an exact science. And we do have to try many different things before we get it right. But believe me, we are trying, and I want to get it right. We need to get it right so that we can start seeing our numbers go down. And in that regard, I will say that I have issued that charge to my residential commitment providers because they are the experts in this. They're supposed to be anyway. And I have issued that charge to them. Hey, let's work together. Let's figure out what we really need to be doing here to start turning the recidivism numbers down a bit. And they have told me that they are ready for the challenge, and they want to work with me on that. So I'm very happy. We'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Oh, Ro, do we have any questions from anyone in the audience yet?
We have some that are slowly trickling in. So, we often hear about the challenges of mental health for adults, but only recently have we seen more emphasis on the mental health of children. Are there any strategies that DJJ is implementing to help children deal with the special mental health challenges that kids face?
Well, as I said earlier, I don't think that I gave a figure, but 55% of the kids who come into my residential programs have some sort of mental health issue.
Wow.
Yeah, 55%. And the challenge there is that in order to even get to rehabilitation, you've got to deal with the mental health issues first, because the youths are not going to be receptive to the other programming that you're trying to do on the criminogenic side. They're not going to be receptive to those until you've dealt with their mental health issues. I will say this, I think that we are finally starting to understand as a state of providers of preventive care, and thanks in very large part to First Lady Casey DeSantis, who has turned 15 spotlights on this issue, about the importance of making sure that our children's mental health is one of the things that we work on early on throughout their young lives and throughout their schooling. Like everything else, guys, it's prevention, it's early intervention, so that when they come, when they get older, it's not something that I'm dealing with. Quite frankly, as a juvenile justice administrator, I think one of the hardest things that I have to do is to treat children's mental health issues. Some of them are significant. And I don't think that the JJ system is where those children are best served. I think they would be better served in a different environment. They would have been better served if we had caught them early. They would have been better served if there was a better continuum of services for them. And so one of the things that I know that the First Lady wants to do and wants the state of Florida to do is to look at mental health services. How shall I put this? As I don't want to call it as a package, but as an area of services that the state really funds in such a way as to not have some money in DJJ, some money in DCF, some money in DOE, and all of those parties not working together, right? That makes perfect sense to me. And I think if we can get to that point, we will be much, much, much more effective in catching and treating and dealing with our kids' mental health issues a lot earlier. Look, it's hard growing up in this day and age. I never thought I would be old enough to say that, but it's hard, right? There's a lot going on in this world. There is, kids aren't necessarily feeling safe. They don't have the same, for whatever reason, the same outlets that we had for working off energy and working off stress. And it's hard. And we need to do something for them. We need to do better for them if they're going to grow up to be healthy, productive adults. And I really do support the First Lady's efforts in this. Again, we've got a tight budget year or two coming up, but something tells me that she's going to advocate hard for this, and I look forward to helping her do that.
Well, Secretary, I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home, and so I am just hoping and praying that you don't ever have to see them.
No, unless it's hey, Auntie Simone. Yeah. That's it.
Well, we want to move to, if I can move to talking about a little bit more of a serious subject, the human trafficking issue. And we've seen documentaries done on it. It's a very popular topic that's getting some additional attention. And I know we've criminalized, the participating in human trafficking. And it's painful to even think that this is something that we have to actually address. But how is DJJ dealing with the issue of human trafficking, and are there any initiatives that you all are coalescing around to prevent that?
Well, DJJ is part of the statewide task force on human trafficking that is run by or overseen by the Attorney General. That is an important part of the state's overall strategy to fight human trafficking. Within DJJ, however, we have developed a human trafficking screening tool that we developed in cooperation with the Department of Children and Family Services. And it's designed to, at the moment a youth comes into our system, so into detention, that we do that screening immediately of all the kids. And that if that screening tool, which is currently being validated, if that screening tool indicates that a child may have been trafficked, and there are two types of trafficking that we're concerned about. It's labor trafficking and sexual exploitation.
Sure.
Depending on what the indicators are from the screening tool, we then know what we have to do in the way of service provision. Everything that we do is, you all have probably heard the term trauma-informed care. And what that basically means is that the programming and the provision of services for youth takes into account the trauma that they have suffered. So It is so that we're delivering the services in the way that doesn't re-traumatize them. And a lot of what we do is designed to address the issues going on with those children that led them into a situation that unfortunately allowed them to be trafficked in the first place. We have recently now rolled that trafficking or that screening tool. We're starting to use that now in our prevention programs, because as part of our work with our sister agencies on the statewide council, we realized that we weren't doing anything early on to potentially determine whether kids were being trafficked. And so we have rolled that screening tool now out to our prevention providers. We've provided the training for that. And so we're hoping, and I'm fairly confident that we're going to, by doing this, save many more children who are being victimized in that way. So those are just a couple of things that we're doing, but the statewide council is working hard. DCF and DJJ in particular are always constantly working together, because as you guys can imagine, very often our populations, we share a population, right? So DCF dependency involved kids are going to could become DJJ involved kids and vice versa. So our two agencies really do work hand in hand to keep those kids as protected as we can. It's a challenge, though. It really is, because what happens a lot of times, and I know this happens with DCF children, is, kids will run back to a situation that for whatever reason makes them feel safe and loved, even though that safety and loving comes at a very, very high price.
Right.
And so keeping those kids from going back is really the big challenge. It really, really is. But we're working hard at it.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. We want to remind our viewers that for our Florida Bar Attorney viewers, that you can get free CLE credits today. The number is 4188. So write that number down, 4188. Replays of the show will be available on YouTube, the Florida Bar Government Public Policy and Advocacy Committee. That's the Florida Bar GPPAC. The address is scrolling on your screen right now. But we wanted to thank you, Secretary Marstiller. This has been absolutely enlightening, a little bit frightening to hear some of the things that some of our kids are dealing with, but very hopeful. I'm leaving hopeful. I don't know about you, Ken, but I am leaving hopeful, and I'm glad to have you break down some of the data for us. We know that the great news and the great things that you all are doing may
Uh-oh, I think
she froze.
There we go. You're back, bro.
I'm back. I'm back. We do have a comment. Let me go ahead and post it here from Kelly Kibbe Smith. She said another excellent program. So thank you, Secretary Marstiller. It's been wonderful. We appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you both again so much for having me on. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I will make myself available to you all again at any time. Just let me know. And tell me again what that CLE number was, because I
was going to email it to you, but it's 4188. Yes, we all get CLE today.
I need some CLE too.
Let me go ahead and put that back up on the screen for everyone.
We all need it,
CLE number. Everyone needs it. All our events are canceled the next year, so we all need the CLE. It's 4188.
Exactly. Well, thank you guys so much, and again, congratulations to you all for the innovative show that you put on, and it's very informative, and I wish you and your section of the bar, every success. By the way, are you all on Twitter?
We are. I follow you on Twitter.
It's a Friday dance.
All
So
right.
don't forget that.
I love that. We'll check it. We'll check it out.
Yeah.
And Ken, do you want to tell our viewers about our next episode and
I
what's
sure
coming up?
do. Yeah, we're super excited to have our CFO, Jimmy Petronis, is going to be our next guest. CFO Petronis is scheduled for Monday, November the 9th at 11 o'clock. So mark your calendars for that special conversation. Another great guest that we're bringing to you to get CLE credit again. And we're super excited to have the CFO and look forward to talking some banking, which is my area, and insurance and many other topics. I'm sure Hurricane Sally as well. So looking forward to that opportunity. Mark, you want to mark your calendars and join us for that as well.
Thank you. Well, you all have a great day.
Great. Thank you guys for
Thanks.
joining.
Take care.